Alright, you guys, so this is actually the retake. Because the other video messed up with the size and dimension, I'm actually redoing it for you guys.
Yeah, 何もそこまで言うことはないが、そうだな。乙女なところもあるんだろう。
He's like, no, I don't have anything to say about that, her being a decent maiden. And like the other maidens of the world being angry if she calls herself that.
誰かを好きになり、求める。そのひたむきさは乙女心と言えなくもない。
He's like, if I like someone, I just ask for them. It's hard to say that there is devotion in a girl's heart, though. And she freaks out. She's even blushing. She was like, my cheeks got really hot when the story headed in an unexpected direction. And she's like, saying so, and having someone seek you who is dedicated, being straightforward from the beginning, means they will not be shy and will be awkward rather than shy. She's like, well, I can't say something so embarrassing myself.
おや、人を好きになるのは恥ずかしいことではないだろう。少なくとも悪いことではないはずだ。
Nightmare's like, oh, is it embarrassing to love people? At least it shouldn't be a bad thing. And she's like, well, yes. She's like, but it's still embarrassing. And she's like, this is not my pattern or style, and that's because I know me best. She's like, how to explain this to people that you meet in this dreamy world who throw away reality, though? She's like, they're almost like idiots. No matter what is left after abandoning my original world, it is not a sane thing to leave everyone here alone because they don't know how to take care of themselves. And she's like, surely this is the reason that I remain. And she's like, but now I'm stuck here with that crazy choice that I made. And she's like, I've become familiar with this world and found my place. That includes you too, as a favorite person. For being a reason to remain, she tells them. And she's like, the remaining, or me remaining, was because I wanted us to be together. That was a big part of it. And she's like, that's probably the biggest reason, actually. I wanted us all to be together. And she's like, let's just stop this. If I keep looking back, the amount that I had to leave behind, it's going to hurt. She's like, this nightmare will make me feel sick.
やれやれ。君も君で相変わらずだな。
Nightmare's like, wow, you can still do this. You're still the same as you were. And she's like, why, of course I am, she said bluntly. She's like, the contents and personality of someone do not change so easily. Even if the situation they're in changes, the fundamentals of the person are the same. And she's like, let's talk about something different. She's like, I also said something silly, because if you try to change the story quickly, Nightmare will be all over it.
そうだな。私も君に言っておきたいことがあったんだ。
Nightmare's like, oh yes, I also had something that I wanted to tell you, so this is good. And she's like, what did you want to say? She's like, unexpectedly, I'm confused by the serious turn in conversation. When you look at his face, he has eyes that enjoy looking somewhere else. So he doesn't want to look at her.
ああ、そうだ。そのうち君の滞在地のものからも言われるだろうが。
Nightmare says, yes, some of it you will tell me, and I'll tell you some of it. She's like, what does that mean?
風が生まれた。嵐が来る。
So he tells her that the wind is about to be born. And she's just like, ... What? Huh? What did you say?
聞こえなかったか？間もなくハートの国に嵐が来る。そう言ったんだ。
He's like, didn't you hear? Soon after this, a storm will break into Heart Country. And she noticed that his phrase was seriously returned, and so she became increasingly upset. When silence followed with her being unable to respond, Nightmare added that a storm would come by each territory separately, and that eventually the whole country would be swallowed by it. And she's like, what is this wind that you're talking about?
おや？嵐を知らないか？
He's like, oh, don't you know about a storm? Like, what one is? And she's like, that's not true. I know what a storm is. A normal one. She's like, storm. She's like, of course I know. And she's like, in my original world, I had seen them many times. However, I don't think that it's the same as my world. And if I think so, I think I'll be disappointed. Because there is no change in weather in this world normally. And she's like, Wonderland is different from my world, the original world where many things lived. And she's like, White Rabbit, Peter, Cheshire Cat, Boris, these are just the beginning of people that have animal ears and are different. And she's like, this is funny enough in this world. And she's like, there's also no time in the world that I know. And she said, even if it exists, it's a crazy example of it. She's like, the night comes after the day directly, and then it turns into the next day. Moreover, the intervals are also different. Months, days, hours, and minutes do not exist, and people live according to these irregular times. She's confused at the beginning, but now she said she's adapted to it and gotten used to it. And, like time, there's no change in the weather here, so she's adapted to that too. It's always sunny, always comfortable. I'm just getting used to this being normal, and if you suddenly say a storm is coming, you'll make me confused, she told him. She's like, is this a joke, or is this like a tall tale that you're telling me in this conversation?
いやいや、違うよ。冗談なんかじゃない。
Nightmare's like, no, it's not a joke. And she's like, he has a pale face and coughed up suddenly, but continues.
たまに来るんだ。何が原因で、どういう理由なのかもわからない嵐が、たまにね。
He says sometimes it comes, and the storm, when it comes, sometimes we don't know what the reason is.
私たちはそれを察知はできるが、防ぎようはない。クレイジーストームが来れば、飲み込まれるしかないんだ。
He tells her that we can detect it, all of us here, the roll holders, the hour hands on the clock, but we can't prevent it from occurring. And when the crazy storm comes, it can only just be taken in as you're swallowed up. And she was like, what does that mean? Crazy storm? Like, literally it's called that? And she's like, literally crazy is in its name. Are you sure you're not joking this time, Nightmare?
そう、クレイジーストーム。突然やってくる、原因不明の狂った嵐。
He's like, yes, it's a crazy storm, an unexpectedly crazy storm, ...
それに飲み込まれると、いつも何かがおかしくなるんだ。
He tells her something can go wrong forever when you're swallowed by it. She tells him, isn't this strange? Like, originally in this world, this stuff doesn't happen, ...
それはそうだが、おかしいなりのルールがあるだろう。だが嵐が来れば、最低でも一つ、多ければ二つ、三つ、どの住人も何かを狂わされる。
He actually tells her that she's right about that, but is there a weird rule that they can't have storms? Because he says if there's a storm, there will be at least 1, 2, or more of them. Because every resident will end up crazy about something, so each territory. And she's like, huh? What's this mean? She's like, the story is heading in another direction that I don't understand also. And without understanding anything, I was lightly frustrated with this new question presented. She's like, inhabitants of this world are just hard to understand naturally, and Nightmare is the man who can especially be said to be hard to understand. She's like, in the case of this person, even in this dream world, where he enjoys doing so intentionally, it's obvious, and so it's even more frustrating.
心外だな。私は楽しんでなどいないよ。
He tells her, though, it's out of my hands. I mean, it's not here in your mind, so I'm not having any fun with this. And she's like, you're telling me lies. You'll just try to confuse me on purpose.
していない。君を心配しているから説明しているんじゃないか。
He tells her, I'm not the one doing it. I'm just worried about you.
君はよそ者だから嵐の影響は受けない。でも周りが急におかしくなったら驚くだろうからね。親切な忠告さ。
He's like, because you are a stranger, you won't be affected by this storm. But if you suddenly go crazy, you would have been surprised. And now she's super confused. She's like, telling me such a thing, ... Top choice is you believe him, which I do. I like Nightmare. She's like, I don't feel suspicious of anything, and that seems to have biased me towards him for some reason, ... She's like, it may be true that you are worried.
おや、嬉しいね。私が君を大切に思っていることを分かってくれているんだな。
And he cuts her off, having read that from her mind. He's like, oh, I'm so happy you know that I care about you. And she's like, he did read my mind, and so Nightmare relaxed, but she immediately stuck her finger in his face. She was like, don't get in my way, don't read my mind, you're reading my thoughts again. Now, is there a continuation to this story? So she, like, scolded him. And she's talking to herself. She's like, it's true that you are worried, but more than that, you enjoy confusing people with smoke and mirrors the most. And she's like, that is what a man named Nightmare does. And it was something that, from the beginning, she had seemed to hate about him. She's like, you're dressed up when you have such a pale face, and what you did really wasn't that great, Nightmare. So don't try to dress it up, sir. And she's like, this place is really kind of childish, ... She's like, he's so immature. He freaks out because he read this. And she's like, ... and that's all that you understood? She's like, gently I asked Nightmare, who seems to have read that from my mind. If you understand, can you explain about this more easily and concisely, she tells him.
そうは言われても、さっき言ったことが全てなんだ。これ以上わかりやすくと言われても難しい。
Nightmare's like, even if you say it that way, I mean, it's all that I told you last time. And it's difficult to say anymore, because it's not any easier to understand. And she's like, checking her understanding here, a storm of unknown causes coming to Heart Country, and everyone in the territories are going to go mad, so something is going to happen with the residents?
そう、それが全部だ。誰が何を狂わせられるかは、嵐が来るまで誰にもわからない。だから、これ以上説明のしようがない。
He tells her, yes, that's all that there is to it. No one knows who can be affected until the storm actually comes and they go crazy. So I can't really explain anymore. He tells her, ... She's like, even if you feel the signs of the storm, you don't know exactly when it will come. It seems to visit each territory step by step then. And she's like, Nightmare telling me I can't explain it anymore. It doesn't make this easy to understand. In the first place, it's unclear what he means by the residents go mad or someone gets mad during the duration of the storm. And she's like, still, every territory seems to have a storm. She's confirming her understanding on that. And she's like, the storm doesn't seem to be one of meteorological phenomena. A storm that blows and has heavy rainfalls, probably. She's like, it can't be that then. And she's like, normally with those, after that, thunder, river flooding caused by secondary damage, traffic troubles occur, but only such things can come up in my world. And she's like, what's with going crazy? Not like a train diamond? And this is weird because they actually in the last games named them Diamond Country, and the way to travel between dimensions, including back to Heart Country, would be through the train. So I thought that was interesting that they kind of give a nod here if it did translate properly. And this is supposed to be taking place kind of like with alternate versions of themselves to Heart Country, the first game, during the storm. Because it turns them crazy and into alternate selves. She's like, of course, everyday life here is crazy, but is it environmental that it goes crazy? And she said, that I still don't understand what he means by the residents go mad. And she's like, is it like the normal storms? It can't be like that.
いや、違うよ。君の考えている通り、周囲の状況の話ではない。
He's like, no, that's not it. And he said, as you were thinking, it's not about the surroundings, not about the environment. And she noticed that he came back to the conversation, having read her heart, and answered her.
むしろ、そんな被害は何も出ない。君の知っている嵐と、この世界の嵐、クレイジーストームとは、全くの別物だ。
He tells her, rather, there is no such type of environmental damage. The storms that you know of are completely different from the storm of this world. The crazy storm, quote unquote. And she's like, different?
ああ、嵐が来ても街に被害が出たりはしないから、その点は安心するといい。狂わされるのは人だ。人がおかしくされてしまう。
He tells her that it's safe and that it's not like that because there's no damage to the city even if a storm hits here. And he is like, people are just going to go mad, ... And she's like, is it going to be everyone that goes mad, ... And she's like, if they become strange when a storm comes, would it be like when you see a full moon and then some people transform like a werewolf? ...
そんなわかりやすいものじゃないよ。もっと小さな、些細なことだ。
Nightmare's like, it's not that easy to explain, and it's a little on a smaller scale than that. And so she's asking him, what do you mean?
本当にちょっとしたことだよ。大して問題にならないこともあるし、少しだけ困ることもある。
He's like, it's a little bit like that because of the personality change, but it's not a big deal, and it's a little difficult to explain any further than that.
だが、深刻になるほどの変化じゃない。いつもと少し違うけれど、やり過ごせる。それくらいの変化だ。
He's like, but it's not a serious change, and it's just a little different than how they would behave, normally or usually. And he told her it's also a change that can be undone, so it's not permanent. And she's thinking to herself, so what is this actual change then, ... And she's like, what a song he sings. What should I do? Even if something happens, like, he said this is going to be crazy. What should I do to prepare?
さっきも言っただろ。わからないんだよ。誰にどんな変化が訪れるかは、実際に嵐が来てみるまで確かめようがない。
He actually tells her that they don't know anything about what I told you earlier. I and they also can't see who's going to change until the storm actually comes.
この世界の住人なら、大して気に留めないものも多い。だが、君にとっては初めてのことだから、教えておいてあげた方がいいだろうと思ったんだ。
He's like, if you live in this world, there are a lot of people who don't even care about it. But it is the first time for you, so I thought that it would be better to tell you before it affected them and you saw it. So he's like, it's more about notification than prevention, because it's just going to happen. And she's noticing that he's implying that he is kind. And she's like, ... but I don't feel grateful for this information. And she's like, it's not always going to end up like this when you are taught new things. In fact, that's not normal. Like, normally it's not terrible things you learn all the time.
何も知らなければ驚いてしまうだろうが、知っていればさして問題でもない。変化も一時的なものだ。嵐が去ってしばらくすれば元に戻る。
He tells her, well, if you didn't know anything, you would have been surprised, but now you know it, and so it's no problem. The change is temporary anyway, ... And she notices that he was able to read her inner thoughts, but Nightmare continues to explain. Even though she's talking about to herself how this is terrible information and she didn't really want to know, but he continues to explain, even though he read that. She's like, this is a surprising change here. Like, what should I do if I'm actually in trouble then?
困らないよ。いや、困るかもしれないが、この世界ではそこまで深刻なことにはならない。
He's like, it's no problem. No, I mean, you may actually be in trouble, but in this world, it would not be so serious, because everyone likes an outsider here.
笑って済ませられるほどのことだ。驚くのも最初だけ。嵐の仕業と知っていれば、むしろ楽しめる。
He tells her that it's just enough to make you laugh while you're, like, enjoying it. He said, you're only going to be surprised about the storm at the beginning, the effects. And he's like, if you know that it's the storm's work, it's rather fun, ... And she's like, it's fun, you say. Hey, ...
ああ、楽しめると思う。特に君の滞在地の住人は嵐を歓迎するはずだ。彼らは楽しいことが大好きだからね。
He tells her, oh, I can enjoy it. I mean, especially the residents in your place should welcome the storm, because they too like to have fun. And he's talking about Boris and Galland, and she thinks of them. She's like thinking of their faces. They don't like boredom. They love fun and thrilling play. When she's imagining them, she can only imagine a happy figure for those two. And she's like, I can only deal with it, ... And she's like, I don't know what the storm is, but if you're bored or blown away, I'll welcome you with both hands. So she decides to, like, wave it off and just accept it, because she can't really do anything about it.
間違いなく喜ぶとも。君も一緒になって楽しめばいいだけだ。
He tells her here that I'm definitely happy you said that. You just have to enjoy it all together. And she's like, ... I wonder if I can actually enjoy it. She's like, I finally found my place. An important group of housemates, too. But apparently everyone's going mad, or something about them will. And she's like, I don't want anything to change, ... She's like, can't we just have it stay as it is now? ... And she's like, even if I think this is so, the storm will still come. Her dream with Nightmare ends, and she wakes up with a huh, ... And that's where I'm going to end the video, you guys. I'll try to update in about 2 weeks, so thanks!